are coming on the air with the fallout from that shakeup at the Justice Department. President Trump firing his Attorney General after growing frustration. One person telling our team that Pam Bondi simply did not execute on his vision for the DOJ. So, what does that mean for the next person to have that job? And will Bondi still have to answer questions about Jeffrey Epstein? We've got our team fanned out across Washington. Also new tonight, that body cam video of the minutes right after Tiger Woods crashed his car, as we're learning about what may have been one of his first phone calls after that happened. The man on the other end of the line, President Trump, Woods says. What the new video tells us about his arrest, as Woods is now seeking treatment. Also breaking in just the last few minutes, literally the last 10 minutes, a judge dismissing most of Blake Lively's claims against the director she accused of sexual harassment. The hearing happening right now as our team reads in. Then, a big-name rapper allegedly kidnapped. The new arrest of a group of robbers who apparently targeted Gucci Mane. Hey, I'm Hallie, and we're coming on the air with that breaking news. Pam Bondi now out as the Attorney General of the United States, and in just the last few hours, responding to her firing, her ousting by President Trump. She's calling the president's historic and highly successful efforts to make America safer and more secure the honor of a lifetime. Taking her place, this man, he's probably a familiar face. He's been pretty out there when it comes to media appearances, interviews, etc. The Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, he's now the acting Attorney General. So what led up to this moment, right? What led up to this big cabinet shuffle? This is somebody who was really an OG loyalist of the president's in Bondi. She defended him during his first impeachment trial. She played a direct role in his push to try to overturn the legitimate 2020 election results. Just 24 hours ago, she was right with him. She was, look at this, right there at the Supreme Court, side by side, joining him in the motorcade, etc., as the president visited the court. One person familiar with the deliberations tells us that while the president likes Bondi, like human to human, he was getting more and more frustrated with her. Frustrated that she didn't execute on his vision in the way he wants. That vision involving prosecutions of his political enemies or perceived political rivals. Under Bondi, those really haven't materialized. Investigations into alleged voter fraud in the 2020 election that have so far turned up nothing to suggest that it was, as the president says, stolen. It obviously was not, as the president perpetuates that election fraud lie. Or tamping down the attention on the Epstein files. On that note, Bondi's faced a ton of criticism there. She's supposed to appear in a couple of weeks. I say appear. It's behind closed doors. She's supposed to show up behind closed doors for a deposition just about 12 days from now with the House Oversight Committee. Is that going to happen? Some members of Congress want it to. So do some family members of survivors, like the family of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, telling me that alliance to a corrupt agenda never serves you, saying another one falls on the sword to protect the powerful. We hope Bondi has the courage to testify and actually do right by survivors this time. We've got team coverage tonight, starting with Monica Alba at the White House. So we've talked about what led up to this moment. Bondi now out, Blanche in for now, for good, or is that a question mark?
I think it is a question mark, Hallie, and this is a situation where the president does make decisions about his inner circle that can change, and certainly we do know he does seem to have a very good relationship with the now acting Attorney General and Todd Blanche, who of course was previously his personal attorney for cases in years past, so they have a good relationship. But it is possible that he is going to look for someone else to permanently replace Pam Bondi. And we know that one of the contenders for that job is Lee Zeldin, who is currently the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA administrator, and he is someone who is already Senate confirmed. So the upshot of that means that if he had to go through this process, if they do indeed tap him to lead the Justice Department, that could be a fairly doable process. But we also know, going back to his first term, that the president is totally fine with having acting or interim leaders of agencies. He did that a lot back when he was president the first time. So he could also have Todd Blanche in this role for an extended amount of time if he decided to do that. It sort of depends on the priorities now that he wants to see executed on by whomever is in this job, either in the temporary space or more permanently.
Monica, what do we think the final straw was for Bondi? Because for all of the, and there's been sort of speculation for a little bit, as our team has reported out, the president frustrated with her. He was clearly unhappy with her handling of the Epstein case, which we'll talk about in a second. But, and interestingly, if you compare it to the first Trump term, Bondi actually lasted less long than Jeff Sessions, who was like who the president loathed by the end, basically. It is just an interesting data point, I think, in this cabinet shuffle that is happening with Kristi Noem out, now Pam Bondi. It makes you think about who's next.
Yeah, and really, in terms of the turnover, in the first term, we saw so much of that. There were so many different examples. And even with Jeff Sessions that you bring up, the president would sort of daily talk about his desire to fire him. So we were always sort of waiting for it to actually happen. And then it was actually months before he did. With Pam Bondi, it was a little bit different. There had been mounting frustrations. We do know there was a heated confrontation at the White House in the last couple of weeks. We're told by sources familiar with that exchange. We don't know exactly what that was about, but that was fairly recent. And we do know that months ago, the president posted publicly what was meant, it seemed to be a direct message to his attorney general that started with Pam Bondi, and then a directive to pursue these additional cases and to basically act with more urgency than he felt she was showing. So we do know that on the personal level, as you mentioned, the president is extremely grateful to her. He wishes her all the best. He very much likes her. It almost seems like there had been discussions about whether she would be moved within the administration, which is what we did see with Kristi Noem, obviously in this new special envoy position. But ultimately, Pam Bondi decided, or the administration came to the conclusion that she was better served by going to a job in the private sector. And that's what she will do over the next month with that transition. Hallie.
Monica Alba live for us there on the North Lawn. Mon, thank you. Let me bring in Sahil Kapoor, who's joining us now. So we talked about this closed-door deposition that she's supposed to do in about 2 weeks now, April 14th. Still happening or a question mark?
It hasn't been canceled yet.
Okay.
So as far as we know, that is still the expectation. I think there are questions that members will have about her handling of the Epstein files. The fact that she and the DOJ repeatedly missed deadlines under statute, the law that was overwhelmingly passed by Congress, as well as some of the releases, including personal identifying information of victims that had to then be reacted and prompted an understandable outcry. Take a look at some of the reaction, though, because there's at least some question what Republicans might try to do with this. A spokesperson for the House Oversight Committee, which is led by the Republican James Comer, says, quote, since Pam Bondi is no longer Attorney General, Chairman Comer will speak to Republican members and the Department of Justice about the status of the deposition subpoena and confer on the next steps, end quote. I think he's going to find there's some real bipartisan interest in continuing the subpoena and bringing Pam Bondi in. That includes from Robert Garcia, the top Democrat, says, quote, she will not escape accountability and remains legally obligated to appear before our committee under oath. There's also Nancy Mace, who had a role in this subpoena, also one of the few Republicans who broke off, teamed up with Democrats to force the vote on releasing the Epstein files, says, quote, my subpoena still stands. When the Oversight Committee moved to subpoena Bondi, I did it by name, not by or not as the sitting Attorney General of the United States. So there you can see some clear bipartisan interest in still having Pam Bondi testify.
And the survivors want to see this, too. Many of the Epstein survivors who have talked about this.
Absolutely. Yeah. In their view, a personnel change doesn't ultimately change the fact that they want justice for the survivors, for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. There's a statement here from World Without Exploitation that I want to put up, a coalition working to end human trafficking. Quote, survivors deserve accountability, not more mistakes that put them in harm's way. We will not stop until the full truth is revealed and survivors receive the transparency and justice that they have fought for, end quote. And of course, is anybody going to be prosecuted as part of this investigation for these many horrific offenses?
Questions that whoever succeeds Pam Bondi is going to have to answer. Sahil Kapoor, lots to follow on this one. Thank you very much. We're going to have more on Pam Bondi, her tenure, what happens from here later in the show. But we've got to get to this other developing news tonight. This newly released body cam footage of what happened right after Tiger Woods rolled his car down in Florida and then apparently hopped on the phone with the president.
All right, you got it. All right, thank you. Bye. Say again?
Just keep me down here with us, please.
Yeah, I was just talking to the president.
Just a casual convo with President Trump in the moments after that car crash. Officers made Woods then go through a series of field sobriety tests. That's what you're seeing here. So they put him through the paces on this kind of thing. And then they ended up arresting him.
Okay, sir, and place your hands behind your back. Place them behind your back. There you go. So at this time, I do believe your normal faculties are impaired, okay? And you're under the unknown substance, okay? So at this time, you're under arrest for DUI. Yes, sir.
You hear him ask kind of incredulously, I'm getting arrested? Woods has pleaded not guilty to driving under the influence. And he says he's stepping away to focus on his health. Although right after the crash, he told officers that he maybe wanted to play in the Masters, which starts next week.
Are you golfing in the Masters this year?
Hoping so.
Oh.
Depends on y'all.
Yeah. Don't depend on me.
Jesse Kirsch is covering this one for us. So there's a lot to this, Jesse, starting with what is apparently this call to the president by Woods' telling. We've known that they spoke. President Trump confirmed that, although we can't say for sure that this was the exact moment the president was talking about. We've reached out to the White House for more on this, but what else do we know?
Yeah, so at this point, Hallie, we don't know who called whom. We don't know if this was that phone call or if he's referring to the president of some other organization. But of course, there is a connection between Tiger Woods and the president in multiple ways. Of course, both of them avid golfers. Tiger Woods has also been in a relationship with the president's former daughter-in-law. So we know there's connectivity there. We are, as you mentioned, out to the White House for comment on this. We have not received any response yet. And when you look at the timing of the body camera footage, the time codes on those clips, it'll be interesting to also know from the White House if this was that phone call, where exactly the president was, if he was on the ground, if he was in the air on Air Force One. So that would be an interesting add-on there as well. And short time after that, Tiger Woods goes through those sobriety tests, and he struggled at times. And as you just showed, he wound up in custody.
What else do we know about his condition at the time of the arrest? Anything else about, as he said, he's seeking this treatment now. He says he's going to step away from golf for a little bit. I don't think we know the timeline on that.
We don't know where he's going because
Right.
his lawyer put in writing in court and got the green light from the judge for Tiger Woods to leave the country for this treatment. The lawyer citing that he has privacy concerns in the U.S. and wouldn't be able to effectively get treatment here. The lawyer also saying this is inpatient treatment that he is seeking. But what country, what kind of treatment, that is not clear. A couple of things that stood out to me from this video. And by the way, I got to give a shout out. We had around a dozen people from our team that have been working on this all day long. We're talking about hours of footage, gigabytes of data that had to be downloaded and sorted through. But some of the things that have stuck out to me as we've been going through these clips, there were times that Tiger Woods shook his head. There were times that he yawned. There were times he closed his eyes when he was in custody, handcuffed and in the back of the vehicle. And, you look at those sobriety tests, and when you listen to these clips in full and you hear the deputy give instructions and then he performs the tests, some of the time, as is detailed in the affidavit from that arresting officer, the sobriety tests were not followed. The instructions were not exactly followed. And you can hear the deputy even at times reminding him of instructions and also telling him, she's not going to remind him of something again. So there were moments like that stuck out. And we do have some more, I believe, sound from these interactions that we can play for you now.
I was looking down at my phone, gonna look at changing stations, and next thing I know, boom.
Okay. Are you okay? Feeling hurt?
Totally fine.
Okay.
Totally fine.
So that's before the arrest. That's Tiger Woods describing what he says happened in the crash. And there's one other thing that we found in this video, Hallie, that I want to flag for our viewers, and we'll be showing them more footage later. So we can, certainly, they should keep an eye out for more footage to come. But one of the other moments from all this video, which is surreal to look at, is you have first responders smashing out the window in the back of Woods' SUV to retrieve his golf club bag. They pull the bag of clubs out. There is a golf club head cover, which is a tiger. He's Tiger Woods. And separately from that, his putter is pulled out from the bag by Woods' manager, and one of the law enforcement officers is marveling at this golf club, which, by the way, if you look it up, Tiger's putter, according to Woods in that video, has been used to win 14 majors. So you can imagine that is an extremely valuable piece of sports memorabilia. And so in the midst of all this, while he's going through these sobriety tests and being placed under arrest, Tiger Woods is also getting help from those first responders to get those extremely valuable golf clubs out of his car.
There's a lot to this. Jesse Kirsch, thank you, and thanks to the team. That team it is large, as you mentioned, going through all of this. More from you, I know, next hour. Appreciate that. To the markets now, a bit of a yo-yo there because they seem to be looking for a signal, any signal that the war against Iran will wrap up soon. But it's kind of a shrug on that, kind of a shrug for the stocks, too. Down for the Dow, a little bit up for the S&P, the NASDAQ. Oil up again, up to more than $110 a barrel. An $11 jump, marking the biggest gain in 6 years. And from President Trump, no pledge to try to take the off-ramp here after that primetime speech last night. He alluded to maybe a couple more weeks of fighting, but also getting a lot of attention, some of it perhaps unwanted. What he said at an event that was supposed to stay private, pledging to ask Congress for more for the military at the cost of some other stuff.
We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. It's not possible for us to take care of daycare. Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things, they can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We have to take care of one thing, military protection.
The White House with a bit of a walk back on that today, saying the president's record proves he will always protect and strengthen Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. We're also getting some developing news, too, that in the midst of this war against Iran, that there is a shakeup inside the U.S. military. The Army's chief of staff now fired, according to what 3 officials are telling NBC News. He'd expected to stay on board until the summer. We've got team coverage tonight. Courtney Kube has more on that, but I want to quickly start with Brian Chung on all things sort of money, financial, oil, war. It's all related here. And we are seeing at one point markets spiking today because of this report from the Iranians about the Strait of Hormuz. Everybody around the world is watching this piece of, this critical waterway, and it's having a huge geopolitical impact.
Yeah, it was a super weird day on Wall Street. It looked like at 9:30 when the markets opened that it was going to be a nasty, nasty day on Wall Street. We were down something like 1.5%. It rebounded when you mentioned that report where it was suggested that Iran is working with Oman to have some sort of protocol in place to allow ships to move through the Strait of Hormuz. Relatively thin on details. We saw a rebound in markets, and then things essentially since the later part of the morning just went sideways. I'm not really sure if traders just logged off early for the long Easter weekend. You have to remember markets will not be open tomorrow. And for that reason, it does still seem, though, by and large, that the story for investors does remain uncertainty over when and where this war ends. I think what was interesting was that despite the president's commentary last night, you didn't see any sort of assuaging of fears in the stock market over whether or not this war was going to come to an end anytime soon. One economist in a note that I saw earlier this morning said actually nothing from that speech told me anything about whether or not we would get more certainty for markets. And for that reason, you still have volatile markets, even though on the surface, not much action today with the markets ending the day mixed, Hallie.
Brian Chung, thank you. Court, let me go to you here because, Courtney, this Army, can we call Army Chief of Staff, it is a shakeup. He did get fired based on what you're reporting is what's going on.
Yeah, it's absolutely a shakeup. So he is the senior-most 4-star general in charge of the U.S. Army, the Army Chief of Staff. He's been in the job since September of 2023. He's supposed to be there for a 4-year gig. But the reality is there have been rumors that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was going to fire him for some time.
Predating the war?
Precisely, predating the war. And basically this is Secretary Hegseth is going after people and has been since he was nominated or since he was confirmed into this job and sworn in. He goes after people who have any kind of ties to DEI, have any ties to the retired General Mark Milley and the previous administration, and that's where Randy George fell in here, the Army general. He worked directly as the senior military aide for the former Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. So the reality is he has been in the crosshairs with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth for some time. But I cannot stress to you enough the idea that the Secretary of Defense just fired the head of the Army, the 4-star general in charge of the United States Army while the U.S. is at war, is for nothing to do with the war, by the way, is so beyond unorthodox.
So we are just getting in a statement from the Pentagon. I'm going to show you off of my computer, too, because it's literally just coming in as you're speaking here. But the general confirming that he will be, they say retiring from his position here, effective immediately. We've got the statement up on screen saying that the Department of War, that's what they call it, is grateful for General George's decades of service to our nation. We wish him well in his retirement. To your point, Courtney, they're framing it as a retirement. It's in the middle of this war against Iran. Does this operationally, do we know even what this operationally means for the actual strikes, attacks, targets that they're trying to hit?
Probably nothing. I mean, I don't think this will have a direct impact on what we're seeing the U.S. do in Iran right now, or even the strategy going forward or anything like that. But the reason that something like this normally would not happen is because it just conveys to an enemy like Iran a sense of chaos, a sense of uncertainty, or potentially even weakness. It is just simply not done. And again, if in fact something like this does happen when you're in the middle of a conflict, it would generally be because there is some specific tie to the conflict. The individual was seen as having done something wrong or immoral or whatever it is. In this case, the officials who we're speaking to said it is because of his ties to the former Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin.
And the officials you're speaking with also say it's not a retirement, right?
Well, he has to retire because he's a 4-star general. So if he doesn't have another job to go to, which he doesn't, he's forced to retire.
Got it. Okay, Courtney Kuby, great reporting from you and the team. Thank you. Come back as we are learning more about this. As you say, it is not nothing, that's for sure. Thanks, Court. Also not nothing, this piece of breaking news that's happening just in the last 30 minutes or so with a court hearing that was happening as we're on the air, wrapping up for this huge Hollywood legal fight between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively after this federal judge tossed out late today most of Lively's claims in this sexual harassment suit against Baldoni. Remember, they were in It Ends With Us together. Lively's lawyers had accused Baldoni of acting inappropriately on set and orchestrating a smear campaign when Lively spoke out about the allegedly toxic work environment. Reps for Lively and Baldoni have not immediately responded to requests for comment. So here's what I know, Misty. Let me bring in Misty Maris, our legal analyst here. This was a hearing that was supposed to start at 5 o'clock Eastern, so we would be, 20 minutes into that. But the hearing came minutes after this judge basically tossed most of the claims that Lively had been making against Baldoni. Does she still have a case left?
Yeah, so 10 out of the 13 claims that she raised have been thrown out. She still does have a case left. Some of the most prominent of these claims are still moving forward, that being what we call the retaliation claim. That means she made a complaint about sexual harassment and was retaliated against. Hallie, this is the smear campaign that we heard about. But many of her other claims out the door, so no defamation, no sexual harassment. And this is interesting because the reason that sexual harassment component is thrown out is not because the judge is making a decision about who is right and who is wrong. It's about whether or not she was an employee of Wayfair. The judge said she was not. She had enough independence that she doesn't fall under that umbrella. So it's important to understand the standard here. This is what we call summary judgment. It means that there are no questions of fact for a jury to decide. So after everything's done, depositions, everything's exchanged, the judge decided that many of these claims, 10 in fact, there's not enough to get under the standards of the law to fulfill those obligations. So only 3 remain, one of those 3 being retaliation, breach of contract, and aiding and abetting retaliation. Those still have a lot of meat on them, and we could see them still continue on to trial.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. So is there still going to be a trial now? Because I think that was supposed to start, I believe, in May.
So, Hallie, here's the thing. When you get 10 of your claims knocked out, remember, Blake Lively is the plaintiff. She's the one bringing the lawsuit. So when you see these claims getting tossed out, it might be time to think about whether or not a settlement is possible. This could make the plaintiff's side, Blake Lively's team, rethink their strategy before moving to trial in May. So this is a tremendous consequence. This is the last procedural step before trial. It's the last chance for the defense to have a victory, and they certainly did, getting 10 of these claims thrown out.
I was just going to say, TLDR, this is a blow to Lively and a win for Baldoni, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Misty Maris, I'll reiterate, too, we haven't heard yet from reps from either, but we're going to keep you around. I know you're going to be monitoring all of it in case we do. Thank you, Misty. Great to see you, as always. Some bombshell testimony now out of a different courtroom, this one in Hawaii in just the last hour or so, from a doctor accused of trying to kill his wife on her birthday. The prosecution was asking him about when he started reading his wife's texts after he noticed she was spending a lot of time on her phone. Watch this.
You were in detective mode and you didn't look through her actual text messages?
I did look at the text message threads on her phone.
You looked at the text message threads on her phone, right?
I did not look through all of her text messages. I opened the texting app to see if there's anything that looked suspicious there. There wasn't.
I want to show you a live look now at court where prosecutors right now are cross-examining Gerhard Koenig. Prosecutors say he tried to kill his wife some 3 months after finding out she was apparently having an emotional affair with a coworker. Now, Koenig's wife survived the attack. She testified. She told the jury he wanted to push her off a cliff, and that when that didn't work, he allegedly pinned her to the ground and tried to inject her with something like a syringe. There were some vials. Officials never found the syringe or vials at this alleged crime scene. Koenig's son from a previous marriage then testified his father FaceTimed him after the attack. This is the son here. The son says his dad confessed to the alleged crime and said he was suicidal. Koenig denies confessing to anything. He's pleaded not guilty. Steve Patterson has been following this trial for us, and there have been some very dramatic moments here with this cross-examination that's happening now from prosecutors seeming to be strategically intended to give the jury a peek into what they see as Koenig's more controlling side.
Controlling is the operative word that they would want the jury to understand as the truth. Koenig might say that there was this emotional affair. It shattered his trust. And so the things that he were doing were based upon things that he felt were helping the relationship. That's the source of friction. We're not even getting into the attack yet, Hallie. They are squarely focused on setting up sort of the trouble in paradise with the marriage before we get even to the hike. And so that's what they're dialing into. That's what I'm watching right now. They're grilling him on sort of prior things that he had done, looking into the phone, looking into different statements, emailing the person that he thought she was having this emotional affair with, and sort of the conflict, the back and forth with that. I want to play for you a moment where they're sort of going at it a little bit. Prosecutors really digging deep here. Listen to this.
You wanted Ariel to give up her career, correct?
No.
You wanted to make sure Ariel never had contact with Jeffrey Miller again, right?
That was my strong preference, for her to not have contact with Mr. Miller ever again.
And in order to do that, you wanted access to Ariel's phone at all times. Is that right?
That is absolutely not correct.
And for clarification, Jeffrey Miller is the person that Ariel apparently had this inappropriate relationship with, a work colleague, somebody that he wanted her to separate from. That's the source of the friction. That's what you're hearing there in court.
It has been a case with a number of twists and turns here, because I think, have they shown, I believe they have, Steve, check me on this, you'll know. I believe they showed pictures of her after this attack, right? With her bloodied face, and the jury has seen that, right?
From multiple different angles, Hallie, some of which we can't even really show on TV. You can see part of her scalp is missing. You're watching right now. This is body cam video from the Honolulu police. They're approaching her after that attack. She says he attacked her suddenly. He says she attacked him suddenly, tried to push him off a cliff and used a rock to bash him in the face. It's sort of a he said, she said, with the jury trying to figure out what the supporting evidence that proves which case is right. Hallie?
When are they going to get the cases? This is kind of the finale, yeah?
Yeah, we're close to the end. The judge signaling that. We may see closing arguments as early as even tonight. The jury should have it early next week, Hallie.
Okay, Steve Patterson, all over all of it for us. Steve, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We've got much more to get to tonight, including, of course, the Artemis 2 mission. You thought, listen, we did how many hours of coverage? You watched it here 24 hours ago. It ain't over, folks. We got 9 days left. Get psyched. It's fascinating to watch all the twists and turns, the toilet problems, the outlook problems. Astronauts, they're just like us. And in a couple of hours, we're going to see the next really big step for this Artemis 2 mission. It's going to happen right before 8 o'clock Eastern, when there's going to be this sort of turn toward the moon. I want to show you this live look now from NASA of the view from that spacecraft. This is after what we saw about 24 hours ago, the Kennedy Space Center moment. I know you watched it right here on NBC News because we all watched it together. They're now the first astronauts to head toward the moon in decades, more than 50 years. And what was so cool, we're starting to see this video come out. Well, we started to see it late yesterday. Can you imagine being on a plane flying over the Space Coast and watching this thing take off? These images are amazing. Like, it's one thing to see the rocket up close. It's incredible as it fired off from the launch pad, but to see it soaring into the sky like that from the sky is just unreal. Crew is going to spend the next 9 days up there. They're going to take that lunar loop. So this is a bit of a simulation. They're going to go around the far side of the moon. Aaron Gilchrist is at the Kennedy Space Center for us. That's going to happen on Monday, Aaron. And I know we're not supposed to call it the dark side of the moon. I know it's the far side. Okay. I got it. I'll make that correction. But what's so interesting is they've got a lot of stuff to do before they even get to the far side of the moon.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are already in a busy day. We are 22 hours, 53 minutes into this mission. The astronauts were able to get a little bit of sleep. They woke them up a couple of hours ago with music from John Legend. Green Light is the name of the song. Ready to Go Right Now was the refrain they heard, and they are hard at work already today. We just heard a little while ago from mission managers that they are giving the green light for the trans-lunar injection burn. That's the fancy NASA term for this maneuver that they're going to do. Yeah, that's what I was going to explain to you. Really, they're just going to fire up the engine, one more major firing of the engine for the Orion spacecraft so that they can get on that right orientation and trajectory to start that movement to the moon. You talked about the fact that they're going to do this flyby. It's going to take 3 days to get there after they do this TLI, as they call it, this TLI burn. It'll take 3 days to get there, and then they will swing around the far side of the moon, where they will see parts of the moon that nobody has seen before. We know the Apollo program made several trips to the moon. Obviously, they saw many things on the far side, but there are going to be things that no one has seen before that these astronauts will get to see before they start that movement back to the Earth and get back here after 10 days. And already today, as you noted, there have been some issues, minor things really, that they've been able to identify. In the last little while, we know they've been working on filling bags with water. Their water system is working just fine, but as a precaution, they have the astronauts now filling some bags with water before they start that movement toward the moon. Earlier, just not long after launch, we know there was a communication system issue that they had to take care of. That's fine now. And then there was this toilet issue that you referenced. And I'll spare you the real details of what could have gone wrong, but their toilet is much more complex than the ones we use here. There is a fan on the toilet that was jammed, apparently. They were able to fix that, and now they're good to go for that system as well, Hallie. Oh, you see the picture there?
Can I just say, what a world that a toilet fan issue is, national news for good reason, because these men and women are like a bazillion miles up in space having to deal with all this. It's just wild. Are you there now? Are you there for the duration until they come back?
Say that one more time.
Are you there? Are they keeping you in Florida?
I'm here today. I will be here for a little while, I think. Tom Costello obviously has been honchoing a lot of our coverage, and he's the dean of all things NASA for NBC News. So he's going to be following the mission as it goes. I will tell you, though, you make the point about this toilet thing, right? I mean, this is a test flight in every sense of the word. They want to make sure that everything that could go wrong is something that they've got a handle on, that they understand, that they can fix, because there are going to be additional Artemis missions, right? We know that Artemis 3, 4, and 5 are going to happen. They're going to try to build a base on the moon, and then that will be sort of a relay station to get to Mars and to eventually live in what we call outer space.
Aaron, you're the best. Thank you for putting up with me. I just am curious. I like to know where my favorite people are going to be at all times when we talk about Artemis. You, Tom Costello, Al Roker, I know, is back home after all the fun yesterday. Aaron Gilchrist, thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate it. Obviously, we're going to have so much coverage of this next phase of Artemis 2. Gotti Schwartz, our resident space geek, is going to have all of that starting tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern right here on NBC News Now. Coming up, how the world's oldest tortoise ended up at the center of a crypto death scam. That's a sentence we just said. Plus, which rap superstar just signed a deal to play pro ball with the Nanjing Monkey Kings? We've got that after the break. Dramatic new details from the Justice Department tonight about a crime involving some big-name rappers. The DOJ says Gucci Mane and two other industry pros were kidnapped and robbed by two other rappers, Pooh Shiesty, Big 30, and some others. A total of 9 suspects have been arrested. Here's what we know. These Justice Department officials say Gucci Mane was lured into a fake business meeting in Dallas at a music studio that turned into what they call an armed takeover. This happened back in January. Mane and others were held at gunpoint. And these thieves, these robbers, took Rolexes, other jewelry, cash. At one point, Gucci Mane was apparently even forced to sign a release from a record label. Let me get right to Priscilla Thompson here. It is wild stuff, Priscilla. What else happened?
Yeah, Hallie, unbelievable, made for the movies kind of stuff. So Pooh Shiesty is signed to Gucci Mane's record label. So this business meeting was scheduled in January at a recording studio in Dallas, and Pooh Shiesty shows up with 8 other people. You mentioned Big 30. Also, his father was among those with him, and Gucci Mane shows up with 2 people. They're all in this recording studio together. Pooh Shiesty says to Gucci Mane, "Can we speak privately?" And he allegedly, according to this complaint, asked Gucci Mane to sign a release form that would release Pooh Shiesty from the record deal. Gucci Mane declined. They argue back and forth. Pooh Shiesty asks someone to bring him a bag and pulls out an AK-style pistol, according to this complaint, and demands that Gucci Mane sign this document releasing him from the recording deal. After that document is signed, then he goes on, Pooh Shiesty, to steal Gucci Mane's wedding ring, other jewelry, his wallet. And then the small group of individuals goes back out into into the larger group that's in that recording studio. And apparently all 8 of the other men who were with Pooh Shiesty pull out guns and began demanding property from Gucci Mane and the men who were with them. So we're talking about Louis Vuitton bags, Rolexes, cash, wallets. There's even physical altercations where there are photos of people with scratches. At one point, the complaint says that there was a man who had a gun put to his head, and they believed that they were all going to be executed. But they were allowed to leave eventually, and then this investigation took place where you have all of this surveillance video in and around the recording studio, the hotels, the rental cars that were booked. And you also had some of these people posting the stolen goods on social media. But what's more, Pooh Shiesty was, according to this complaint, under home detention. So there's electronic evidence that he was at that recording studio when he should not have been. He should have been at home. So obviously these arrests were made. We know that 8 of the 9 men were arrested and have been charged with all 9 of them, though, charged with kidnapping and robbery. Hallie?
Can I just ask one question, Priscilla? I don't know if you know the answer to this, but presumably, if Pooh Shiesty had been under home detention, he would have known that, right? That there was an electronic monitoring situation happening on him?
100%. And in fact, Hallie, according to the complaint, there was a conversation with his parole officer who said, "You are not where you're supposed to be." And Pooh Shiesty said he thought he had permission to leave and told the parole officer that he would be returning home.
Priscilla Thompson, you said it. Feels like something ripped right from a movie. Thank you very much for bringing us the details on that. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, a D.C. committee has now green-lit the president's plans for that so-called big, beautiful ballroom he wants to build at the White House. Protesters rallied outside the building where a panel mostly voted yes on the controversial East Wing renovation project. But if you're like, wait a second, didn't a judge just press pause on this? Yes, a judge did do that, saying that the president doesn't have the authority to do this without approval from Congress. The Trump administration has appealed, so the whole thing is kind of caught up in limbo. We will keep you posted. Number 2, big police hunt for a woman who allegedly attacked a former Fleetwood Mac member in Santa Monica. We told you about this, Lindsey Buckingham. Officials say she threw something at him, some kind of a substance, and then ran off. Fortunately, Buckingham was not hurt. Number 3, rapper J. Cole says he's going to take his talents to the basketball court. The Grammy winner just signed a deal to play in China's pro league with the Nanjing Monkey Kings. It's not his first time going pro. Cole was previously in leagues in Africa and in Canada, so he may be one to watch. Number 4, Hershey's says all Reese's products are going to go back to their classic recipes with traditional milk and dark chocolate. Remember, after the grandson of the Reese's founder criticized the country for basically cheaping out. He tells NBC the change is all part of a PR narrative. But the company's CEO says they were going to make these tweaks to the recipe before any complaints were made. So, taste test for yourself. Number 5, good news for fans of the world's most famous tortoise. There is one. His name is Jonathan, as I'm sure you knew, obviously, considering his fame. And you might have seen this viral rumor that he died at 193 years old. Total lie. He's alive. And more incredibly, the rumors of his death were part of an online hoax linked to a crypto stunt. Jonathan is widely believed to be the oldest living land animal on Earth. Somebody had pretended to be the caretaker for Jonathan, said he died, accepted some money. Just a crypto scam. What do people, man? How do they think of this stuff? Coming up, how a chopper ended up in the middle of a Florida highway. Look at that. Plus, what's up with this so-called bare-bottomed burglar who just struck again in Virginia? We got a lot tonight. Okay, we're getting to that. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Southern Bureau, 2 people in North Carolina are badly hurt after a house explosion there. You can see it's just totally charred. 5 people were inside when this happened. Police say they are investigating this as a crime after they found explosives inside. It's very scary. We're following that. Also out of our Southern Bureau, take a look at this chopper in the middle of a Florida highway. Officials say it was called in after a car hit a concrete wall and then crashed into some other cars. One of the drivers was airlifted to the hospital. Unknown how that driver is doing. And out of our Washington Bureau, a new video of what they're calling the bare-bottomed burglar creeping around a Northern Virginia neighborhood. He's just wearing shoes in somebody's backyard. Police say this is actually not the first, there's something wrapped around his head. They say this is not the first time this has happened. In fact, it's happened 5 times in the last month. They're hoping that somebody recognizes him so they can finally give him a new accessory, which would be a pair of handcuffs. Let's go back to our top story tonight, the firing of Attorney General Pam Bondi, the now former Attorney General, on her way out, soon to be former. One source says the president didn't believe Bondi ever executed on his vision for the Justice Department, so our Laura Jarrett is taking a closer look at some of the moments that may have triggered that frustration.
Pam Bondi's time as Attorney General marked by heated hearings.
I don't know the answer, Senator.
Yet you do know the answer to that.
Don't call me a liar.
And a number of missteps, losing her the president's confidence. Bondi plagued by her own promises around the release of the Epstein files.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
The president's base growing restless while they waited for the release. Bondi initially giving binders labeled The Epstein Files Phase 1 to right-wing influencers visiting the White House. But most of that material was already public, leaving President Trump's supporters unsatisfied. One of those figures given a binder posting, "Be outraged that the binder is boring. You should be, because the evil deep state lied to your face." Months later, the Department of Justice and FBI saying in a joint memo, a review of the Epstein documents revealed no incriminating client list. The eventual rollout of the files, mandated by Congress, was marred by messy redactions, culminating in a fiery hearing before the House Judiciary Committee.
To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand.
How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No.
Bondi also taking heat from the president for not prosecuting his political enemies. The president accidentally posting on Truth Social a message to Bondi, pushing her to charge James Comey, Adam Schiff, and Letitia James. Bondi later indicting both James and Comey.
So you are unwilling to tell this committee about conversations with the White House
and if I may
James
continue,
Comey's indictment.
and if I may continue,
Let me show you a picture.
James Comey was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States.
Those indictments later dismissed as the result of an unlawful appointment of the top prosecutor in Virginia, which the DOJ appealed. Bondi also taking heat for saying on a podcast the Trump administration would target hate speech.
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything, and that's across the aisle.
The remarks receiving blowback from Republicans who perceived it as an attack on the First Amendment.
Look, in America, it's a very important part of our tradition that we do not, this is a conservative principle, and certainly an American principle, we do not censor and silence disfavored viewpoints. People in America are allowed to say crazy things.
Laura Jarrett, NBC News.
Coming up, the new details just into us from police about the death of a rising political star in Florida. So the case now of a rising political star in Florida found dead at her home. Her husband now charged with premeditated murder. Officials are investigating the death of the Coral Springs vice mayor, Nancy Mateo-Bowen, as a domestic violence incident. Video obtained by our NBC station in Miami from a bystander appears to show Mateo-Bowen's husband in handcuffs. In a statement, her family says she was a source of strength, wisdom, and love. Florida lawmaker Jared Moskowitz, congressman, says Mateo-Bowen was about to announce she was running for Congress. George Solis is following this one for us. What else do we know about this case, George?
Yeah, Hallie, it's such a heartbreaking case. And when you read through the court documents, as we have, you really just see this picture that is almost gratuitous. And we want to warn viewers, some of the details here are graphic. According to the affidavit here, her husband, Stephen Bowen, went to their home. There was no signs of any marital trouble, according to family reports in here. But he allegedly took a shotgun, was at the home, and at one point may have even used a pillow as a silencer, according to the affidavit. And when authorities got to the home during a wellness check after she didn't appear for meetings, they found her body in blankets along with 3 spent shell casings. As I mentioned, because she had not attended meetings for that day, they called for a wellness check at the home, and that's when they made that grim discovery. And Hallie, the reaction, of course, has been just one of mourning across the spectrum, not just in the political sphere, but from her family, saying that she believed in bringing people together, listening to those she served, and working tirelessly to create positive change in her community. I also spoke with a close friend of hers who was just very emotional, as you can imagine, about this loss. Take a listen.
Look at Nancy. Look at her. Like, you know, she's going through something just as bad, but like she's doing it. And that gave me the courage to be like, okay, I got to get up. I got to wake up. I got to start showing back up for my community as well, because she hasn't stopped.
Yeah, and Hallie, we're learning that there's going to be a candlelight vigil for Bowen tomorrow in front of Coral Springs, where, again, she was just that history-making commissioner here before she was the vice mayor here.
George Solis, live for us in Florida. George, thank you for bringing us that and for staying on top of this. Thanks. We've got a lot more coverage picking up right now. We are coming on the air with the fallout from that shakeup at the Department of Justice, with President Trump firing his Attorney General today. More on his growing frustration, with one person telling our team Pam Bondi didn't execute on the president's vision. So is her successor going to do that? And will Bondi answer questions still about Jeffrey Epstein in front of the House Oversight Committee? We've got our team covering all of it. Also new tonight, the body cam video of the minutes right after Tiger Woods crashed his car, as we're learning about his first phone call after that happened. He says the man on the other end was the president. What that new video is telling us about his arrest, as Woods now seeks treatment. Then the new details we've learned in just the last hour from a hearing on Blake Lively's case against Justin Baldoni, why a judge has dismissed most of her claims. Plus, those 4 astronauts on their 250,000-mile mission set to push off from their orbit around the Earth to head toward the moon. We are live at Kennedy Space Center with what comes next, with the glitchy toilets and the glitchy outlook. Plus, a big-name rapper allegedly kidnapped. The new arrest for a group of robbers who targeted, allegedly, Gucci Mane. It's a story that feels ripped out of Hollywood. We've got that coming up a little bit later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and we are coming on the air with that breaking news. Pam Bondi out as Attorney General. In just the last couple of hours, responding to her firing by the president, praising what she calls his historic and highly successful efforts to make America safer and more secure. In her place for now. So who's leading the DOJ? Who's going to lead it? This guy, Todd Blanche. You probably recognize him. He's been very visible, especially when it relates to the Epstein case. He's the acting Attorney General, no longer just the deputy. The question is that going to be for now, or will he get the job for good? Who else could be in the mix? And what led up to Bondi's ouster, basically? She was an OG. She was an OG Trump loyalist for a long time here. She defended him during his first impeachment trial. She played a direct role in his push to try to overturn the results of the legitimate 2020 election. Just yesterday, she was with him, next to him at the Supreme Court. She was in the limo with him. The two of them had been close. That relationship clearly soured. Why? One person familiar tells us that while the president likes Bondi, human to human, he was more and more frustrated with her for not doing what he wanted, essentially, in the way that he wanted it. What was that vision? Prosecutions of perceived political rivals, for example. Under Bondi, those haven't materialized to the degree the president would have wanted. Investigations into alleged voter fraud in the 2020 election that have so far turned up nothing to suggest that it was, as the president says in this election fraud lie, falsely stolen. It was not. Or tamping down on the attention on the Epstein files. On that note, she has faced a ton of criticism. She's supposed to actually appear. She was called, in her role as Attorney General, called to appear at a closed-door deposition about 2 weeks from now. Will that still happen? That's a question mark. Epstein survivors want it to. The family of one of those survivors, Virginia Roberts Dufresne, tells us that they think of Bondi's ouster, alliance to a corrupt agenda never serves you, they say. We hope she has the courage to testify and actually do right by survivors this time. Sahil Kapoor is going to have more on that in just a second, but I want to start with Monica Alba, who's posted up at the White House for us. And let's start with what's ahead here. Bondi is on her way out. Todd Blanche is leading the Department of Justice for now. Is that long term? The president would still have to, nominate somebody officially who would presumably need Senate confirmation. But as you've pointed out before, the president, and we knew this from his first term, he doesn't mind actings in the role for an extended period of time.
He doesn't, and especially when it's somebody who has been an ally, and in the case of Todd Blanche, Hallie, someone who the president knows quite well, since he was, of course, his personal attorney in recent years. So the two of them seem to have a pretty good relationship. The question is, do they or could they have a good enough working relationship in this new job to keep him in that post? So there are discussions ongoing about whether others could be appointed in this role, certainly nominated. And it is somebody who is kind of rising to the top as a potential contender here, someone that's already in the cabinet, and that would be Lee Zeldin, a former congressman who is now the head of the EPA. He's already Senate confirmed. So if the president did decide to tap him for this role to lead the Justice Department, it does seem like he would be able to go through that process fairly easily, fairly smoothly. But in terms of the timeline, it doesn't mean that he needs to do that urgently, because we do know there's at least going to be a 1-month transition process, according to Pam Bondi, where she's going to sort of hand over the reins to Todd Blanche. He's going to take over as that acting attorney general. And then the president can ultimately make this decision. And there could be other contenders in the mix, too. The president likely, when something like this happens, will take advice from various allies and aides about others who may be lobbying for this position too, Hallie.
What do we think was the last straw for Bondi here? We know that it was a number of things here. Walk us through that piece of it.
I think that there were mounting frustrations over the course of many months, but we do know as recently as in the last few days and weeks, there was at least one heated confrontation that we know about between the president and his then attorney general at the White House. We don't know exactly what that was about, but it could have been about a range of issues that we do know have been connected to the source of some of this annoyance and frustration that the president had, dating all the way back to the beginning of the Epstein files, where we know there were questions about comments that she had made that could never be backed up. And then, of course, to those prosecutions that you mentioned, with the president being very public about wanting her to do things that she tried to do but couldn't do, it seems, as effectively or as broadly as he wanted her to pursue. Hallie.
Monica Alba, live for us there on the North Lawn. Mon, thank you. Let me bring in Sahil Kapoor, who's joining us now. And we talked about sort of the connection to the Epstein case here. She was supposed to go for this closed-door deposition on April 14th. Now, she could certainly be compelled to still come as a private citizen. She doesn't have to. They have deposed private citizens before. Look at, the Clintons, for example. Now, of course, private citizens. The question is, will they? Is there an appetite for them to do so? Nancy Mace seems to want the committee to do this. She still wants to hear from Pam Bondi, and so do survivors.
Yeah, and there is some bipartisan support clearly on the committee to persist with this subpoena. That ultimately is going to come down to the chair of the House Oversight Committee and his members, James Comer. A spokesperson for Comer says it seems to suggest it's a bit of an open question, saying since Pam Bondi is no longer AG, the chairman will speak to Republican members and the DOJ about the status of the deposition subpoena and confer on the next steps. His Democratic ranking member, Robert Garcia, says absolutely the subpoena should still be on. That, quote, she will not escape, she being Pam Bondi, will not escape accountability and remains legally obligated to appear before our committee under oath. And then, of course, Nancy Mace, one of the 4 Republicans who teamed up with Democrats to force this vote and ultimately force the release of the Epstein files, says, quote, my subpoena still stands when the Oversight Committee moved to subpoena Bondi. I did it by name, not by or not as the sitting Attorney General of the U.S. So that's her interpretation. And of course, Democrats continue to accuse this administration of attempting a cover-up on the issue of the Epstein files. That, too, is not going away.
Can we nerd out for just a second here? Because let's say the president does decide to pick Todd Blanche to be in that job permanently, or Lee Zeldin. Talk about the confirmation process here. Zeldin's already Senate confirmed, right, because of his position leading the EPA. Would he have to get reconfirmed?
Yes, he would if the president wants to shift him to Attorney General, but so did Todd Blanche. He got 52 votes.
Right, for the Deputy Attorney General job. He'd also have to get reconfirmed.
Yeah, both of them have been confirmed by the Senate. Both of them would have to be reconfirmed in order to become a permanent Attorney General. And look, Todd Blanche got 52 votes. It would have been 53 if one Republican wasn't absent. So he held every Republican for that role. That starts off as being a good sign. But look, the context is different. That was early on in the Trump administration where members were willing to give the administration more latitude. There have also been instances since then that are certainly going to come up as questions if, this audition that Todd Blanche is likely going to be on leads to a nomination being sent to the Senate, including July 2025. 9 hours of secretive meetings over 2 days with Ghislaine Maxwell, who's serving a jail sentence on sex trafficking convictions as an Epstein accomplice. Then she was transferred to a minimum security prison without much explanation, with some nicer conditions. I think that's one of those things that's certainly going to come up if he's put before the Senate for permanent confirmation, Hallie.
Much to watch on your beat. Sahil, thank you very much for being here for us tonight, following all these moving pieces. Appreciate it. More moving pieces coming to us after this body cam footage has been released of what happened right after Tiger Woods rolled his car down in Florida. And then apparently, he says, hopped on the phone with the president.
All right, you got it. All right, thank you. Bye. Say again?
Just keep you down here with us, please.
Yeah, I was just talking to the president.
So officers, you heard him reference the president. Their officers then made Woods go through a series of field sobriety tests, right? So this is watch the pen, for example, do this thing with your hands, and then they arrested him.
And place your hands behind your back. Place them behind your back. There you go. So at this time, I do believe your normal faculties are impaired, okay? And you're under that unknown substance, okay? So at this time, you're under arrest for DUI. Yes, sir.
Remember, Woods has pleaded not guilty to driving under the influence. He now says he is stepping away to focus on his health. But in the moments right after the crash, he told officers he maybe wanted to play in the Masters, which starts next week.
Are you golfing in the Masters this year?
Hoping so.
Depends on y'all. Yeah. Don't depend on me.
Let me bring in Jesse Kirsch, who's covering this one for us. And it is worth noting here that Tiger Woods is one of the most famous people on the planet, right? And his celebrity was evident even in this encounter and in this arrest.
Yeah, and you hear it right there, Hallie. He's being asked about the Masters, and there was talk even after the crash. We were talking about, would Tiger Woods be playing at the Masters? He was in the middle of a potential comeback. We now know the tournament says he will not be in Augusta, Georgia. Tiger Woods has said he's stepping away. His lawyer has written to a judge saying he would like to leave the country for treatment. So by all accounts, he is not expected to play golf next week, but it was very clear to those sheriff's deputies who he is. In fact, we even have some footage that we found of first responders, including someone from the fire rescue team, knocking out a window on his SUV to get the golf clubs out of there. And then you see, and this is them trying to figure out because they can't get the trunk to open. So they smashed in the window, they take out the golf clubs, and then Tiger Woods' manager shows off his putter, which was being asked about, to one of the first responders who was on the scene. I believe we have some sound of that, too, so we'll play it for you now.
Left. Just like I explained and demonstrated. Remember to return your hand back to your side. I'm not going to keep reminding you.
So that's actually some of the moments during the sobriety tests. But just going back to that golf club moment, Hallie, it's just pretty surreal, right? You can imagine in most DUI investigations, you're not dealing with someone of that notoriety, and to be holding a golf club that at one point was even referred to as something worth multiple people's homes. Tiger Woods remarking at one point that he won 14 majors with it. So it is a very valuable piece of sports memorabilia being removed there, and that's happening in parallel with Tiger Woods going through these sobriety tests and then being put into handcuffs, which you're seeing right there.
And then what about this reference to a phone call with the president? And, he didn't say the president of the United States. He didn't say President Donald J. Trump. It felt somewhat implied if you just look at that piece of video there. And we know that President Trump has said that he did have a conversation with Woods. We don't know the exact timing of that, right?
Yeah, and we are out to the White House for comment on this. We have not heard anything back yet, but we do know without a doubt there is a connection between Tiger Woods and President Trump. The president referred to Tiger Woods as a friend in the aftermath of the crash. Tiger Woods has been in a romantic relationship with the president's former daughter-in-law. They're both obviously big golfers, so you can imagine there's some overlap there. And so we're trying to get some more detail about what exactly was happening there. But that was also significant because Tiger Woods had stepped away from the immediate vicinity of one of the investigators who was watching him, and he was asked to come back. And then later on was actually trying to put something in his mouth. I don't know if it was gum or, something else. But the investigator said, don't put anything in your mouth. So I just think that also speaks to the fact that they were trying to preserve their investigation. And we know he subsequently took a breathalyzer test, and that came up negative, which lines up with him having said he did not drink that day.
Jesse Kirsch following all of it for us tonight. Jesse, thank you very much for that breakdown. Appreciate that. We've got some more breaking news tonight, this time in a huge Hollywood legal fight that we've been talking about for months now. In just the last couple of hours, a federal judge has tossed out most of Blake Lively's claims in her sexual harassment lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, her co-star in the movie It Ends With Us. Remember, Lively's lawyers had accused Baldoni of being inappropriate on set and of orchestrating a smear campaign when Lively spoke out about the allegedly toxic work environment. Now, we've heard from a member of Lively's legal team who tells us in part that just because the sexual harassment claim is getting thrown out doesn't mean Baldoni didn't do anything wrong. In other words, it's not going forward, not because of the defendant's actions, but because of other reasons, as you saw. We've also heard now from the reps for Baldoni, who said that they are very pleased that the court dismissed the claims, saying what's left is significantly narrowed. They look forward to presenting the remaining claims in court. Misty Maris is covering this one for us. So a couple of questions here, Misty. First, start off, TLDR, this is a win for Baldoni. It is a blow to Lively's case. Is it still going to trial? And what's left of the case that Lively's trying to put on here?
So we started off with 13 claims, and 10 of those have now been thrown out by the judge. So we only have 3 that are going to trial. That's retaliation, aiding and abetting retaliation, and breach of contract. So it is a major win for Baldoni. As his team said, whenever you're the defense, the less you have to deal with, the better. The issues are significantly narrowed and more pointed. So this is certainly something that is favorable to the defendant. Could it go to trial? Well, Blake Lively says yes. That retaliation claim, Hallie, is really the core of this case. And it is that she made a complaint about sexual harassment and that she was retaliated against, meaning a smear campaign was levied against her because she spoke out. So that's the core of the case. And that is going to be the central issue if this case goes to trial. But I will say, 99% of these cases, you have a decision like this on summary judgment, you might reevaluate and see if there's a potential for settlement.
So as I'm just thinking about this, Misty, is it even accurate for people to call this a sexual harassment case, or is it more accurate to call this like a toxic workplace case, a sort of smear campaign case? How should we be thinking about this, given that the sexual harassment piece of it's been tossed?
Yeah, sexual harassment off the table. And Hallie, here's where I think we have to have the major change in the way we talk about this case. We've been calling it Blake v. Justin, right? But there's a bunch of other defendants, and all the individual claims, Justin Baldoni named as an individual person, dismissed. All the other individuals dismissed. So this is Blake v. corporations. This is Blake v. Wayfarer and other corporations. So that's a real game changer. That sexual harassment claim was dismissed because Blake Lively was not deemed to be an employee, which you have to be under the law in order to bring sexual harassment claims. So it's not about who did right or who did wrong. It's about these legal technicalities, but it is a retaliation, breach of contract case against the corporations, not the individuals. So we do have to reframe our mind when we're talking about this one moving forward.
Quick question on timeline. When will we know if this is going to end up in trial or not?
So right now, case is still scheduled for trial in May, and so we'll see if something happens in between.
Misty Maris following all of this. I know this was coming in fast and furious over the course of the last 90 minutes. Thank you for keeping an eye on that hearing and for bringing us the latest. Appreciate it, Misty. Also, breaking news tonight. There's a lot of it in the last hour or so coming out of the Pentagon with an army shakeup right in the middle of this war against Iran. Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, of course, apparently firing the highest ranking officer in the Army, according to 3 people familiar with that decision. He is now out, Randy George, this is, 4-star general, of his position as the Army Chief of Staff. It obviously comes as the president in that primetime address talked about several more weeks potentially of this war, the attacks against Iran continuing here. I want to bring in our national security reporter, Courtney Kube, who's joining us now. Courtney, let me start with this because this is significant. We don't know that it's related to the war in Iran, right? In fact, you think that based on your reporting, it's probably not. It predates that.
We have no indication this has anything to do with Iran, which, I mean, frankly, the fact that a 4-star Army general was fired while the U.S. is at war right now is
actively
astonishing.
At war. Okay.
It's an astonishing development.
Because this is a big job.
It's a big job. And while he's not in charge of that war, just the idea of firing a 4-star general or any kind of military leadership during a war, it sort of portrays this idea of chaos or uncertainty or even weakness to an enemy. So it's generally not done. And our reporting, that's with our colleagues Gordon Lubel and Moshe Gaines, is that, in fact, the Secretary of Defense was angry at Randy George because he used to be the senior military aide to his predecessor, Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense under President Joe Biden.
Well, this is what I was going to ask. Was there anything so sort of urgent or pressing based on your reporting that Hegseth felt he needed to do it at this moment, that he couldn't wait if this war does wind down, let's say in the next month, that he couldn't wait a month to do it?
We've been asking that question and we don't have any indication. I mean, that's the thing. President Trump last night told the world that this war is 2 to 3 more weeks and then it's over. So why, if this was the intent, and it has been Secretary Hegseth's intent for months now, why not wait until the war is over? It clearly seems like he's trying to send a signal.
Does this operationally affect any of the attacks, any of the strikes that the U.S. is conducting in the region?
Probably not.
Okay.
But I mean, it's not good for morale, firing the 4-star general in charge of the Army when you have thousands of men and women who are forward deployed, when there's a very real possibility that the president is going to decide to send some sort of boots on the ground in some capacity in Iran. They're not ruling that out still. It's a remarkable development to do it right now during this moment, Hallie.
And then give us the quick update on the war, obviously continuing. We know that the U.S. military has said they've hit more than 12,000 targets in the region over the course of the last 4 weeks, right?
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. military with the IDF have really degraded the Iranian conventional military. Their missiles, their drones, but they are not out. And that's why President Trump last night saying that they have taken out their missiles and their launchers and things. I mean, after the speech last night, Iran and some of the proxy groups unleashed one of the biggest attacks on Israel that we've seen since this war began. So yes, they have been hurt militarily, Iran that is, but they're not down and out yet.
Courtney Kube, thank you very much for that. As we talk about the war, of course, and the impact regionally and globally, you got to think about what it means economically, too. We have seen the markets kind of shrug a little bit. Today, the Dow closing up in the last couple of hours, or excuse me, the Dow down, the S&P, the NASDAQ were both up, but really kind of met yet again. You know, it is definitely up. That is oil prices at $110, just about $111 a barrel now. That is up 66% since the start of the war against Iran. I want to bring in Brian Chung, who's joining us now. And Brian, we pull up some of the polling numbers here, and you can see, we already know that the president's war broadly is not popular with the majority of Americans. Now his handling of the economy has hit a new low as well. Talk us through it.
Yeah, well, look, when you talk about the economy, even before this war, Americans were not feeling good about affordability. That is the word that we kept hearing. But now you have layered on top of that higher gas prices, higher oil prices. And if diesel costs remain this elevated, you imagine everything else could get more expensive as well. And we're actually starting to hear anecdotes of big businesses starting to pass along some of these higher costs. Take a look at Amazon, for example, obviously a huge marketplace. They just said in a note that NBC News, our team, saw today, that they'd be assessing this 3.5% surcharge on companies that use their logistics to sell their goods to people like you and me. And for that reason, there's a chance that those same marketplaces will then say, all right, you know what, we're going to charge the consumer 3.5% or even more so that we can cover that higher cost that Amazon is charging us. We're also seeing airlines like JetBlue and United say they're having to raise checked bag costs. And so jet fuel prices are obviously up. This is starting to ripple into corporate America and into our pocketbooks as well, Hallie.
I want to play something that stood out from what the president said during his primetime address last night related to the Strait of Hormuz. Let me play it.
When this conflict is over, the strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. They're going to want to be able to sell oil because that's all they have to try and rebuild.
What are the chances the strait opens up, as the president says, naturally, given that Iran is essentially, for the ships, the tankers that are getting through, kind of charging like a toll? They're getting money out of it.
Yeah, it sounds, Hallie, like the talking point from President Trump and the White House as of late has been, well, if the U.S. leaves there, then it's essentially up to the Gulf state nations to figure out how they're going to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, effectively embracing the possibility that the U.S. ends its involvement in this war while the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. So that's the reason why we have seen oil prices continue to rise, even if you look at the stock market and go, okay, actually, we snapped that 5-week losing streak on the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones, but you don't see that happening in oil markets where, as you just pointed out, a barrel of oil is now over $110. You have to remember, on Monday, we were below $100. So the math is that for every $10 a barrel of oil increases in costs on the commodities market, Hallie, that's another 25 cents per gallon that you and I will pay. That suggests that there will be another 25-cent hike on those gas prices that we see at the pump in the coming days.
Brian Chung, thank you very much for that breakdown. Appreciate it. Got to get to some bombshell testimony now out of a Hawaii courtroom in just the last hour or so from a doctor accused of trying to kill his wife on her birthday. He's just been on the stand talking about some, I guess, issues in the relationship, you could call them, leading up to the alleged attack. Listen to this.
Ariel was unwilling to have sex with you whenever you demanded it. Isn't that right?
Can you ask the question again?
Ariel was unwilling to have sex with you whenever you demanded it. Isn't that right?
I never demanded sex, so that's not right.
I want to give you a live look now at court. Prosecutors are, well, that's the ceiling, but before that, they were cross-examining Gerhard Koenig. They say he tried to kill his wife 3 months after finding out she was having an emotional affair with a coworker. Now, Koenig's wife survived the attack. You see her there. She testified, too. She told the jury that he wanted to push her off a cliff, and that when that didn't work, he allegedly pinned her to the ground and tried to inject her with a syringe and some vials. Officials never found the syringe. They never found any vials at the alleged crime scene. Koenig's son from a previous marriage has also testified, saying his father FaceTimed him after the attack, confessing to it, saying he was suicidal. Koenig denies confessing to anything and has pleaded not guilty. Steve Patterson has been following all of this for us. There was a specific fight, Steve, that the prosecution in this cross-examination is focusing on right after Christmas, right?
Yeah, you know, a lot of this sounds like you're kind of watching divorce court, and that's for a reason. They're sort of setting up the entirety of the relationship and focusing on Koenig, the prosecution, the prosecution, I should say, as somebody that is controlling, as manipulative, as obsessive. You're right. There was this fight. After the fight, he goes out and purchases a voice recorder, something he doesn't deny, by the way. Says he just sets it up, doesn't actually use it. The purpose is to record some of the things that she apparently has been saying in their marriage, because what she was saying wasn't true, or denying certain things that they agreed upon due to the fact that she was seeing this guy outside of their marriage, a work colleague that he was worried about, and that they both would describe as an emotional affair, something inappropriate to the relationship, and really the source of how we get to that hiking trail and how we get to that attack. Prosecutors in the defense aren't there yet today because, again, they're sort of creating this runway that leads us there at this point. Hallie?
They also asked him about Koenig, when he actually tracked down the wife of the person that Ariel Koenig was having this alleged inappropriate relationship with. What happened after that?
Yeah, Ariel allegedly having a relationship with a guy named Jeff, a colleague from work, that they got close, said some inappropriate things back and forth, according to both parties involved. When he found out who the spouse of that person was, he emailed her, sent a very detailed message, sort of explaining what had happened between the two parties, and then leaving contact information, not just for himself, but also for Ariel. And prosecutors were keen on that. I want to play that for you. Listen to this.
You wanted Andrea Miller to contact Ariel to yell at her, right?
That's not true.
You wanted Andrea Miller to contact Ariel to humiliate and punish Ariel. Isn't that right?
That is absolutely not true.
Again, everything here sort of about the marriage, the setup to the source of the confrontation that happened on the cliff. Eventually, they will get to the attack itself. You saw a shot of it going to the ceiling. That's probably, Hallie, because they're now going to recess, a lunch break. After that,
okay, got it.
We'll have more cross-examination. You bet.
Yeah, right. Totally different time zone there. But let me just ask you this, too. You know, one of the things that has come up, you talk about the attack itself, that you know, there are graphic images of Ariel Koenig's face and head after the attack. How has the defense explained those injuries?
So, again, prosecutors and Ariel says she was struck on the head repeatedly. You're looking at body cam now. This is Honolulu police. This is after she comes down off of that hill. She says she was struck many as 8 times, 9 times, 10 times, over and over again, like he was trying to kill her. From the defense's perspective, they had even a forensic pathologist who examined those injuries and said that she was struck maybe twice. He says it was self-defense. They were in a scuffle. They were arguing about the marriage. They were on the ground. He was fighting for his life, and he admits to hitting her a few times, and then that's the result. It's sort of that he said, she said, who's right. That's for the jury. Hallie.
Steve Patterson, more to come in this trial, and I know you'll be following all of it. Thank you, friend. Appreciate that as we see before that goes to the jury where that goes. In just a few hours, we're also going to see the next big step for NASA's Artemis 2 mission. They're still in space. We watched the whole tee-up yesterday together. We watched the launch together. Now we are watching them live from outer space. Is that bananas? Like, what a live shot, folks. They're going to push off from their orbit around Earth toward the moon just before 8 o'clock Eastern. So we're looking at just maybe 2.5 hours from now. That's after the successful launch we saw yesterday, right around this time, lifting off from the Kennedy Space Center, that huge rocket, those 4 crew members, potentially going farther into space than any human's gone, heading toward the moon for the first time in 5 decades. And what was so cool about this, these images, but also the ones from people we started to see, can you imagine being on a plane, flying over the Space Coast, looking at this thing, getting launched into the sky, knowing there are 4 people inside that little dot at the end of that trail of, it's just incredible. It's incredible. And you're watching it from the sky. It's just, you can't get enough of it. The crew's going to spend 9 more days up there. They've got a lot to do. They've got testing to do. Here's the simulation. You're going to see it. They're going to basically be in this capsule. They'll do almost a figure 8 kind of slingshot around the moon and then come on back down to Earth. Aaron Gilchrist is tracking all of it. He's still posted up at the Kennedy Space Center. And there's this big moment tonight. It's going to happen a couple hours from now. There's all these milestones. Obviously, the launch was the big one. The landing's going to be another huge one. The moon piece of it on day 5, day 6 is big, but this is big too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And do you want to hear something crazy? We were listening to the NASA radio traffic just a few minutes ago. I think if you guys still have that live picture of the capsule in space, we know that Reed Weissman, the commander, was exercising, and we heard Jeremy Hansen ask Mission Control if the movement that we were seeing on the screen, the movement of the capsule, was because of Reed Weissman exercising, and they said yes. We thought, like, no, it can't be that he's exercising and that's rocking the Orion spacecraft, but in fact, the little bit of movement that we were seeing earlier was because he's on a flywheel, which we understand is about the size of a piece of carry-on luggage, doing some exercising.
Like a flywheel, like an exercise bike?
Yes.
So he's solid coring in space?
Seems like a simple... Basically, and this is all a part of the mission, right? They're supposed to be doing that. They'll do a little bit of exercise every day. They're also testing the life support systems by doing this part of the process. And you mentioned the big movement that we expect tonight, this translunar injection burn, as NASA calls it. And this is the last big firing of the engine that we'll see.
It's all about setting up the sustained presence on the moon. And so, you know, even though they won't be necessarily able to see the South Pole, where we're really interested in going and setting up the system.
All about eventually landing on the moon, building a base on the moon. Hallie, that would be sort of a relay station, if you will, a stop through on the way to Mars and potentially beyond.
Can I just reflect for a moment here, Aaron? Because you'll never catch me in space. But what is so striking about all of this, these astronauts are doing something incredible. It's amazing. They are literally putting their lives on the line for the sake of science, for the sake of exploration, to push the boundaries of what humanity can do. And they're so relatable. Reed Weissman on the spin bike, you know, crushing it so hard he's rocking the capsule. They're having toilet issues. They're having Outlook issues. Like, who among us? They're just like us.
we can all identify, right? Having to call a plumber, having to call IT because Microsoft Outlook is not working. That happened on the capsule. They were able, I understand, to get it fixed for Reed Weissman, the commander, on his Surface Pro. So they were able to get that patched up. It's working now. All systems are go here, Hallie.
We love to hear it. Aaron Gilchrist, thank you very much for all of that. We appreciate you being there, and we're going to have so much more coverage of this next big moment here coming up tonight. You know who's going to have it. Our space geek, our friend, one of our favorites, Gotti Schwartz. That's coming up tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, right here on NBC News Now. We have more coverage here, too, including the scary scene in Florida, how cars ended up stuck underneath this concrete. Plus, the moment an actor from Bob's Burgers was rescued from a fiery car crash. That's next. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, police have evacuated part of a building after a walkway collapsed onto 2 cars in a busy spot in South Florida. You can see some of the damage here. Good news is nobody was hurt. They are working on the fix. Number 2, the voice behind Gene on Bob's Burgers has been seriously hurt in a scary crash in New Hampshire. Eugene Merman's car slammed into apparently a toll booth and caught fire. Police say a state trooper drove by and saw the whole thing, managed to pull Merman from that burning car. We're told he's thanking witnesses, first responders, and hospital staff who helped save his life. Number 3, rapper J. Cole says he's going to take his talents to the basketball court. The Grammy winner just signed a deal to play in the pros in China with the Nanjing Monkey Kings. It's not his first time going pro. Cole was in leagues in Africa and Canada before, so maybe one to watch next season. Number 4, do you have an embarrassing email address from way back when? Well, guess what? Gmail says you can now change that address, that handle, for the first time. They say you can let go of like MrBrightside416@gmail.com if you want to. You can also keep it. A little bit of a time capsule there. You're not going to lose access to your inbox. All of the emails will be linked. Number 5, ticket sales are now open for some lucky fans of the LA 2028 Olympics. Locals in some parts of Southern California and Oklahoma City can now start buying their tickets to the games. Those are locations where we're going to see some of the events. The price, it's a range from $28 to north of $1,000. If you can't catch a ticket, if you don't want to shell out for one, you can watch the games on TV. Can somebody remind me what channel they'll be on? I can't. Is it the Olympics? The Olympics will be on, wait, I'm being told in my ear, NBC. It's NBC. Okay, just 2028. Also tonight, a very dramatic story. You gotta listen to this one. Justice Department is laying out some details about this crime involving some big name rappers, Gucci Mane and 2 other industry pros who were apparently kidnapped and robbed, according to the Justice Department, by Pooh Shiesty, by Big 30, along with some others. A total of 9 suspects have been arrested. So here's what we know. These DOJ officials say Gucci Mane was lured into what was a fake business meeting in Dallas at a music studio that turned into what they called an armed takeover, where Mane and these others were held at gunpoint. This is back in January. They got robbed of their Rolexes, their cash, their jewelry. At one point, Gucci Mane was even basically forced to sign a release from a record label. Priscilla Thompson is joining us now. It is wild stuff, Priscilla. What else happened?
Yeah, Hallie, unbelievable, made for the movies kind of stuff. So Pooh Shiesty is signed to Gucci Mane's record label. So this business meeting was scheduled in January at a recording studio in Dallas, and Pooh Shiesty shows up with 8 other people. You mentioned Big 30. Also, his father was among those with him, and Gucci Mane shows up with 2 people. They're all in this recording studio together. Pooh Shiesty says to Gucci Mane, "Can we speak privately?" And he allegedly, according to this complaint, asked Gucci Mane to sign a release form that would release Pooh Shiesty from the record deal. Gucci Mane declined. They argue back and forth. Pooh Shiesty asks someone to bring him a bag and pulls out an AK-style pistol, according to this complaint, and demands that Gucci Mane sign this document releasing him from the recording deal. After that document is signed, then he goes on, Pooh Shiesty, to steal Gucci Mane's wedding ring, other jewelry, his wallet, and then the small group of individuals goes back out into the larger group that's in that recording studio, and apparently all 8 of the other men who were with Pooh Shiesty pull out guns and began demanding property from Gucci Mane and the men who were with them. So we're talking about Louis Vuitton bags, Rolexes, cash, wallets. There's even physical altercations where there are photos of people with scratches. At one point, the complaint says that there was a man who had a gun put to his head, and they believed that they were all going to be executed. But they were allowed to leave eventually, and then this investigation took place where you have all of this surveillance video in and around the recording studio, the hotels, the rental cars that were booked, and you also had some of these people posting the stolen goods on social media. But what's more, Poosh Shiesty was, according to this complaint, under home detention. So there's electronic evidence that he was at that recording studio when he should not have been. He should have been at home. So obviously these arrests were made. We know that 8 of the 9 men were arrested and have been charged with all 9 of them, though, charged with kidnapping and robbery. Hallie?
Can I just ask one question, Priscilla? I don't know if we know the answer to this, but presumably, if Poosh Shiesty had been under home detention, he would have known that, right? That there was an electronic monitoring situation happening on him?
100%. And in fact, Hallie, according to the complaint, there was a conversation with his parole officer who said, "You are not where you're supposed to be." And Poosh Shiesty said he thought he had permission to leave and told the parole officer that he would be returning home.
Priscilla Thompson, you said it. Feels like something ripped right from a movie. Thank you very much for bringing us the details on that. Appreciate it. Coming up, how a chopper ended up in the middle of a Florida highway. Look at that. Plus, what's up with this so-called bare-bottomed burglar who just struck again in Virginia? We got a lot tonight. Okay, we're getting to that. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Southern Bureau, 2 people in North Carolina are badly hurt after a house explosion there. You can see it's just totally charred. 5 people were inside when this happened. Police say they are investigating this as a crime after they found explosives inside. It's very scary. We're following that. Also out of our Southern Bureau, take a look at this chopper in the middle of a Florida highway. Officials say it was called in after a car hit a concrete wall and then crashed into some other cars. One of the drivers was airlifted to the hospital. Unknown how that driver is doing. And out of our Washington Bureau, a new video of what they're calling the bare-bottomed burglar creeping around a Northern Virginia neighborhood. He's just wearing shoes in somebody's backyard. Police say this is actually not the first. There's something wrapped around his head. They say this is not the first time this has happened. In fact, it's happened 5 times in the last month. They're hoping that somebody recognizes him so they can finally give him a new accessory, which would be a pair of handcuffs. Let's go back to our top story tonight. The firing of Attorney General Pam Bondi, the now former Attorney General, on her way out, soon to be former. One source says the president didn't believe Bondi ever executed on his vision for the Justice Department. So our Laura Jarrett is taking a closer look at some of the moments that may have triggered that frustration.
Pam Bondi's time as Attorney General marked by heated hearings.
I don't know the answer, Senator.
Yet you do know the answer to that.
Don't call me a liar.
And a number of missteps, losing her the president's confidence. Bondi plagued by her own promises around the release of the Epstein files.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
The president's base growing restless while they waited for the release. Bondi initially giving binders labeled the Epstein files Phase 1 to right-wing influencers visiting the White House. But most of that material was already public, leaving President Trump's supporters unsatisfied. One of those figures given a binder posting, "Be outraged that the binder is boring. You should be, because the evil deep state lied to your face." Months later, the Department of Justice and FBI saying in a joint memo, a review of the Epstein documents revealed no incriminating client list. The eventual rollout of the files, mandated by Congress, was marred by messy redactions, culminating in a fiery hearing before the House Judiciary Committee.
To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand.
How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First,
You showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No.
Bondi also taking heat from the president for not prosecuting his political enemies. The president accidentally posting on Truth Social a message to Bondi, pushing her to charge James Comey, Adam Schiff, and Letitia James. Bondi later indicting both James and Comey.
So you are unwilling to tell this committee about conversations with the White House
and if I may
James
continue,
Comey's indictment.
and if I may
Let me
continue,
show you a picture.
James Comey was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States.
Those indictments later dismissed as the result of an unlawful appointment of the top prosecutor in Virginia, which the DOJ appealed. Bondi also taking heat for saying on a podcast the Trump administration would target hate speech.
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything, and that's across the aisle.
The remarks receiving blowback from Republicans who perceived it as an attack on the First Amendment.
Look, in America, it's a very important part of our tradition that we do not, this is a conservative principle, and certainly an American principle, we do not censor and silence disfavored viewpoints. People in America are allowed to say crazy things.
Laura Jarrett, NBC News.
Coming up, the new details just into us from police about the death of a rising political star in Florida. So the case now of a rising political star in Florida found dead at her home. Her husband now charged with premeditated murder. Officials are investigating the death of the Coral Springs vice mayor, Nancy Matea-Bowen, as a domestic violence incident. Video obtained by our NBC station in Miami from a bystander appears to show Matea-Bowen's husband in handcuffs. In a statement, her family says she was a source of strength, wisdom, and love. Florida lawmaker Jared Moskowitz, congressman, says Matea-Bowen was about to announce she was running for Congress. George Solis is following this one for us. What else do we know about this case, George?
Yeah, Hallie, it's such a heartbreaking case. And when you read through the court documents, as we have, you really just see this picture that is almost gratuitous. And we want to warn viewers, some of the details here are graphic. According to the affidavit here, her husband, Stephen Bowen, went to their home. There was no signs of any marital trouble, according to family reports in here. But he allegedly took a shotgun, was at the home, and at one point may have even used a pillow as a silencer, according to the affidavit. And when authorities got to the home during a wellness check after she didn't appear for meetings, they found her body in blankets along with 3 spent shell casings. As I mentioned, because she had not attended meetings for that day, they called for a wellness check at the home, and that's when they made that grim discovery. And Hallie, the reaction, of course, has been just one of mourning across the spectrum, not just in the political sphere, but from her family, saying that she believed in bringing people together, listening to those she served, and working tirelessly to create positive change in her community. I also spoke with a close friend of hers who was just very emotional, as you can imagine, about this loss. Take a listen.
Look at Nancy. Look at her. Like, you know, she's going through something just as bad, but like she's doing it. And that gave me the courage to be like, okay, I got to get up. I got to wake up. I got to start showing back up for my community as well, because she hasn't stopped.
Yeah, and Hallie, we're learning that there's going to be a candlelight vigil for Bowen tomorrow in front of Coral Springs, where, again, she was just that history-making commissioner here before she was the vice mayor here.
George Solis, live for us in Florida. George, thank you for bringing us that and for staying on top of this. We've got a lot more coverage picking up right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.